Roughly 60,000 years ago, modern humans left Africa and began their journey into unfamiliar lands. What they found waiting for them in parts of Europe and Asia was a different kind of human, the Neanderthal. They weren't our ancestors, but distant cousins with a long history of surviving Ice Age extremes. Neanderthals had lived in Eurasia for over 300,000 years before we arrived. They were tough, stocky, and built for cold climates, with larger brains and powerful bodies. Unlike the brutish stereotype, they made tools, used fire, and possibly even had rituals. The encounter between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals was not just a meeting, it was a merging. When these two human species met, they didn't just compete, they interbred, and from those unions, Neanderthal DNA found a permanent home inside us. Today, nearly every non-African person carries about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA in their genome. It may sound small, but it represents a legacy that profoundly shapes our biology. These fragments are not random. They influence key traits that affect how we live and feel today. Geneticists made this discovery in 2010, when the Neanderthal genome was first sequenced. By comparing it to modern human genomes, scientists found unmistakable Neanderthal sequences. It was a revolution in understanding, proving that we carry echoes of a vanished species. The DNA we inherited wasn't always helpful. Some of it was even harmful. Yet some fragments were beneficial, offering advantages in immunity, skin, and metabolism. Over tens of thousands of years, natural selection sorted the helpful from the harmful. This story isn't just about ancestry, it's about how interbreeding altered our evolution. We didn't just replace Neanderthals, we absorbed part of them, and that absorption shaped who we are at the deepest biological levels. Some Neanderthal DNA helped humans adapt to colder environments and new diets. Other sequences altered how our immune systems respond to viruses and infections. Even today, their genes can affect how we sleep, feel pain, or respond to medication. One example is the gene associated with keratin, the protein in our skin and hair. Neanderthal versions of this gene may have made our skin tougher in colder climates. This adaptation likely helped our ancestors survive in Ice Age Europe and Asia. Another Neanderthal legacy lies in the immune system, especially in the HLA complex. This group of genes helps our bodies recognize and fight off pathogens. Some Neanderthal variants gave early humans a stronger shield against local diseases, but not all Neanderthal DNA was beneficial. Some introduced complications. Variants have been linked to increased risk for allergies, depression, and even nicotine addiction. Others affect how we process fat, or our vulnerability to type 2 diabetes. This genetic blend also affected how we respond to modern illnesses like COVID-19. Some Neanderthal-derived gene regions increase the risk of severe infection. Ironically, ancient DNA meant to fight old viruses can now make us vulnerable to new ones. Despite this, the impact of Neanderthal DNA wasn't limited to physical health. It may have shaped aspects of our brain, mood, and even how we process information. Some scientists believe Neanderthal genes influence sleep patterns, mood disorders, and pain tolerance. Neanderthals lived in smaller groups, isolated from each other across vast regions. That led to unique genetic adaptations that weren't found in African populations. When modern humans interbred with them, those isolated mutations spread globally. The blending wasn't uniform. It varied by region and by gene. Some parts of the human genome are rich in Neanderthal DNA, others have none. Areas linked to male fertility, for instance, seem to have purged Neanderthal influence over time. This suggests that not all interbreeding was genetically compatible. Natural selection quietly weeded out harmful combinations over generations. But the fragments that remained endured because they offered some evolutionary edge. One of the most interesting Neanderthal legacies is found in our perception of pain. Some variants inherited from them make people more sensitive to pain stimuli. This might have helped Neanderthals avoid danger, but in modern life, it can be a burden. Another surprising effect is linked to how our skin reacts to sunlight. Certain Neanderthal genes affect how our bodies produce melanin, the pigment in our skin. These genes helped humans survive in low UV environments, but may contribute to modern skin conditions. The story of how their DNA lives on in us is not one of extinction, but transformation. The Neanderthals disappeared, but parts of them are carried in billions of people today. And as science continues to decode our genome, more secrets of their legacy come to light. Their influence goes beyond biology. It challenges how we see ourselves. We are not a pure species, but a fusion of ancient human lineages. The boundaries between us and them blur when you realize you carry their blood. This ancient merging makes our species story more complicated and more beautiful. We didn't become who we are in isolation, but through contact and connection. Even in the deep past, humanity was shaped by diversity and interdependence. The journey of understanding this ancient inheritance has only just begun. With each new genetic study, we find more traits touched by Neanderthal ancestry, and in those fragments we find echoes of minds and bodies long vanished but not forgotten. For centuries, Neanderthals were dismissed as evolutionary dead ends. Yet their DNA proves they were far more than a forgotten footnote in our story. In fact, their genes continue to shape us in subtle and surprising ways today. As genetic tools improved, researchers began identifying more Neanderthal DNA in us. These fragments aren't full genes but genetic variants. Small, meaningful edits. Each variant is like a sentence written by a different hand in the story of Homo sapiens. Modern humans carry different bits of Neanderthal DNA depending on their ancestry. Europeans, East Asians, and South Asians all inherited different Neanderthal fragments. This means the Neanderthal impact is a mosaic, unique in every population. Some variants are linked to our circadian rhythm, the body's internal clock. People with certain Neanderthal genes tend to be morning people by default. This might have helped early humans adjust to long dark winters in Ice Age Europe. Other Neanderthal genes influence how our bodies respond to sunlight exposure. Some affect the production of vitamin D, a crucial nutrient made through sun exposure. This could have helped our ancestors adapt to cloudier northern climates. One unexpected area of Neanderthal influence is our sense of smell. Some inherited genes affect olfactory receptors, the proteins that detect scent molecules. These tweaks may have improved our ancestors' ability to sniff out food, danger, or mates. Then there are the genes that control how our skin responds to the environment. Certain variants affect sweat glands, skin texture, and how we heal from wounds. These were likely important adaptations to life in rugged, often frozen terrain. Neanderthal DNA didn't just change our biology, it helped shape how we live in the world. It may have contributed to how we interact socially, feel emotions, or learn language. These possibilities are still being explored, but the connections are compelling. Take FOXP2, a gene often linked to language development and speech. While humans have a unique version of it, Neanderthals had a similar one too. Though not inherited from them, the similarities suggest they may have had speech-like capabilities. Still, some genes we did inherit influence brain development and mental function. Variants from Neanderthals are associated with depression, anxiety, and even nicotine dependence. The emotional intensity that once aided survival can now manifest as psychological struggle. Even our immune systems show signs of this ancient merger. Neanderthal DNA contributed to TLR genes, tools for detecting pathogens. These sharpened our ancestors' immune responses in harsh new environments. However, this heightened immunity came at a price. It may have increased the risk for autoimmune conditions like lupus or celiac disease. Once again, a trait that once saved lives now complicates them. Notably, some Neanderthal DNA is found in lung-related genes. These may have helped humans adapt to new airborne pathogens in Eurasia, but they also may increase vulnerability to respiratory infections today. The COVID-19 pandemic brought this into sharp focus. A study in 2020 found a Neanderthal-derived region on chromosome 3. People with this variant were more likely to suffer severe symptoms if infected. In another twist, a different Neanderthal gene on chromosome 12 offered protection. This variant seemed to reduce the severity of COVID-19 in some individuals. The same ancient DNA that hurt some people helped others, a true genetic paradox. What's clear is that Neanderthal genes didn't enter our genome by accident. They were filtered and preserved based on what helped early humans survive. The harsh environments of Ice Age Eurasia rewarded those with the right combinations. It wasn't just about cold and disease. Diet mattered too. Neanderthal DNA affects lipid metabolism and how we process fats. This might explain why some populations store fat more efficiently than others. That efficiency once meant survival through long winters and scarce food. Now in the age of abundance it contributes to obesity and metabolic diseases. Ancient solutions have become modern problems in our radically changed lifestyles. Neanderthal genes even influence fertility and reproduction. Some inherited variants affect placenta formation and embryo development. These may have improved chances of successful childbirth in tough environments. Yet paradoxically, other Neanderthal genes are linked to male infertility. This may explain why modern Y chromosomes lack Neanderthal ancestry. Over time, incompatible reproductive genes were gradually phased out by selection. In fact, certain parts of our genome are Neanderthal deserts. These regions are almost completely free of Neanderthal DNA. They likely represent areas where hybrid combinations were too detrimental to persist. This tells us that interbreeding wasn't seamless. It had consequences. Some unions produced offspring with poor health or reproductive issues, but others carried the genetic gold that helped our species thrive. The fact that these genes still exist in billions of people speaks volumes. They represent more than shared biology. They are the memory of contact. A memory written into our very cells, transcending time and extinction. Every time we uncover another Neanderthal gene, we're not just studying them, we're studying ourselves, how we became who we are. And in doing so, we see how interconnected all human life truly is. We once thought of Neanderthals as entirely separate from us, but now we know they are part of us, not metaphorically but genetically. They left no monuments, but their legacy is carved into our bones. As we continue exploring this ancient inheritance, ethical questions arise too. Should we revive Neanderthal traits in medicine or even science fiction cloning? These debates are no longer fantasy, they're entering the realm of possibility. The merging of two human species wasn't just biological, it was cultural. Evidence suggests we may have shared tools, fire, and even ideas. The DNA exchange could have been part of a broader human interaction. That interaction may have shaped our ancestors' art, clothing, and even symbolic thinking. It's possible that contact with Neanderthals inspired new innovations or behaviors, even if their physical form. As the last Neanderthals vanished around 40,000 years ago, a part of them lived on. They did not disappear into total silence, they whispered into our DNA. Their story didn't end with extinction, but with a transformation into us. Each Neanderthal gene we carry is like a fossil embedded in our flesh. It holds clues not just about who they were, but what they gave us. Through science, we're beginning to hear their ancient voice. Buried, but not lost. Those genes influence everything from our skin to our thoughts, from illness to creativity. They helped us adapt, made us vulnerable, shaped our immune systems and emotions. Their DNA is the reason some of us sleep deeper, feel more pain, or resist viruses better. In some ways, Neanderthals helped write the manual for being human in a cold, dangerous world. Without their contributions, Homo sapiens may not have thrived beyond Africa. They had already mastered survival in harsh Eurasian lands, and we borrowed their lessons. The Neanderthal legacy is written not just in DNA but in survival itself, where you absorb their resilience, their adaptations, and perhaps even pieces of their culture. Even in disappearance, they became co-authors of our evolutionary success. Science has even found Neanderthal genes in parts of our brains. They subtly shape the structure of the cerebellum and occipital lobe, areas linked to movement and vision. This might have influenced how we perceive the world, how we interact, and even how we think. Some studies suggest that our creativity, or vulnerability to mental illness, may trace to them. Genes linked to bipolar disorder and schizophrenia overlap with Neanderthal regions. Could their minds have been wired differently, offering new ways of seeing the world? We may never know exactly what it was like to be Neanderthal, but inside us, fragments of their mind and bodies still operate, unconsciously guiding us. Their inheritance lives not in museums but in billions of living, breathing descendants. This realization changes the narrative we've long believed. The story of Neanderthals isn't one of failure and extinction, it's one of fusion, of legacy, and of silent endurance. They were not the other we once imagined, but kin, different, yet deeply related. Our bones may be younger, but our blood remembers their struggle and survival. Their strengths shaped our weaknesses, and their vulnerability shaped our strength. It's humbling to know that we are walking hybrids of ancient worlds. We are not the pinnacle of progress, but the product of deep time entanglement. Neanderthals are not gone. They simply became part of someone else's future. Our DNA is a library of survival, with Neanderthals as its forgotten co-authors. What we once called primitive is now recognized as a source of essential traits. They taught us, without speaking, how to live, adapt, and endure. In their absence, we've learned to read their presence in every cell. Their disappearance gave rise to the myth of pure humanity. But the truth is, there never was a pure human, only blended shared histories. When we look at ancient cave paintings, tools, or burial sites, we may see their influence. Perhaps they shared stories beside fires, just like us. Perhaps the urge to express, create, and connect was something we inherited too. Even our deepest questions about identity are shaped by this inheritance. What does it mean to be human when we carry the genes of another species? It means we are complex, layered, and forged in cooperation as much as in conflict. The Neanderthal genome was not lost. It was scattered like stars into ours. Each human today is a constellation of ancient traits, stitched together by survival. We are living fossils, carrying whispers from a vanished world. Their extinction was not absolute. It was a transformation across time. In many ways they outlived themselves by becoming part of what we are, and through us, they continue walking the earth in a new form. Science has given us more than just knowledge. It has returned dignity to the Neanderthals. No longer brutish cavemen, they are recognized as intelligent, adaptive, and deeply human. And in doing so, we learn to see ourselves with greater humility and depth. As we push forward in genetics and anthropology, more discoveries await. We'll likely uncover more Neanderthal contributions, more fingerprints in our code. Each finding brings us closer to the full intertwined story of humanity. This is not just a tale of DNA, it's a story of belonging. We belong not to a single species or timeline, but to a family of ancient humans. And in that family, the Neanderthals left behind more than bones. They left their breath in ours. So when you breathe, dream, feel pain, or heal, remember, part of that is Neanderthal. When you shiver in the cold or wake with the sunrise, their DNA is at work. We are not separate from them. We are their legacy, walking forward into tomorrow. In the end, Neanderthals didn't vanish. They changed us forever. And perhaps the greatest tribute we can give them is this. We remember, not as fossils, but as family.